Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Friday the 13th edition. Today, we're ranking sequels 2 through 6. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man ready to block my puck, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
I only want your fingers.
Which one's that in?
That's Friday the 13th Part 2. And it's I like how the film has both double entendres and copious amounts of sex and nudity. Normally one or the other suffices.
Well, we've already talked about how much I like boobs. This series has plenty of them.
Only on the Patreon.
That's true, yeah.
You have to pay for that kind of insight.
You gotta pay for that sort of malarkey.
I guess that's sort of like how the porn industry works as well. You know, all the kind of blacked out porn channels.
Yeah,
it's the same deal. You need a subscription to get that level of commentary.
Malarkey. I'm Joe Biden level of old right now.
I assumed you were talking about San Diego chef Brian Malarkey, but yeah.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's September, but we got plenty to do with the Friday the 13th series.
We certainly do.
We're starting early, and I think the two of us are chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I mean, we spent the last 2 years covering the Halloween franchise.
It feels like we just finished it, by the way.
I know. It's remarkable, isn't it? And
yeah.
You know, I consider this to be in one of the big three horror franchises, along with Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. But it's a very different proposition to both of those.
Right.
It's because Halloween is notable for having a number of very strong sequels.
Mm-hmm.
But the original was always the gold standard.
Really, for all horror films.
Yeah.
Not just within its own series, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was always the gold standard and the template for the series as it spanned out.
Mm-hmm.
But not so with Friday the 13th.
Right.
Because not only is there room for improvement, the iconography and mythology of the series is created in and by the sequels.
Yeah, right.
It's really interesting. I started watching or rewatching, I suppose, Crystal Lake Memories, which is the 6-hour documentary about the Friday the 13th franchise.
Such good stuff.
Yeah, and I watched the requisite parts that, you know, going up to the end of part 6. And Tom McLaughlin in the documentary talks about taking the role as writer-director for part 6, going to a screening room where he watched all the Friday the 13th movies up to that point back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And he said what he thought he could bring to the table after all these years was some ground rules about what Jason was, what his powers were, how you defeat him. This is part 6!
Yeah,
and we're only just starting to firm up these conventions.
Yeah. I also might add that what he does add is basically covered by watching a legacy character pull out an occult book for about 30 seconds.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And then that's how we get to know how we can finally get rid of Jason, but
at least they specify it. You know,
they
and like
do. Yeah.
up until that point, I mean, they and also in the documentary they talk about how on a couple of these films the word zombie was taboo.
Right. Yeah.
They were leaning into the supernatural, but they didn't want to go full zombie with Jason until Tom McLaughlin came in and said, "Guys, it's been 6 movies.
Gotta
We
make a
need,
choice somewhere.
we've got to make a choice," and he does. You know, he makes a he,
Well,
he does make a choice.
I think I was telling you off air. We were both kind of relishing talking about this series,
Yeah.
and I had been I had been talking to friend of the show Matthew Aldrich, because we of course covered one of these sequels for the Project 1982, and
Yeah.
during that series he said he has no reference. He had seen no Friday the 13th films, and probably to this day Part 3 is the only movie he's seen, and his question was,
I guarantee it.
What is Jason? What is this thing? I don't understand the rules. And I said it's fine, the movies don't understand the rules either.
No.
So
No,
we're good.
by part 3, we're still in the dark about what Jason is, was, or will be.
And speaking to your point earlier about the iconography and this, what's going on with these films, it's not until number 3 that he gets his mask.
Yeah, that's
Probably the most iconic mask in all of horror films, and he doesn't get it till part 3. That's fantastic.
I know it's and it's in terms of if you're watching the sequels back to back as we do, the hockey mask is Plan B.
Yeah, right.
Plan A is a pillowcase
With one eye hole.
But it was amusing to me watching these movies back to back. First of all, how quickly they realized the pillowcase wasn't going to work. Like, it's off his head within minutes of putting it on.
I think
and also,
in the Crystal Lake Memories, or maybe some of the DVD extras, I'd have to look back. I think it's Warrington Gillette is his name that plays Jason in that movie.
There's some controversy about that, which we'll get to.
There is. Yeah, you're right. He's listed on the credits.
Let's not,
but there's a large man that says, "Hey, I should be taking credit."
Right. Let's not pin our
get
flags
there.
to the mask quite so early as to who plays Jason in that movie.
I thought it was hysterical that one of those two actors at one point had pointed out that nobody had even thought about what you're saying about how difficult it would be to wear the mask. And I can't believe it wasn't their first idea to tape it to his forehead so he could actually see through it, because there was one eye hole, but because you're running around, you could never see through it. Guy's fucking falling down all over the place.
They really, I mean, it's kind of, this is the way that these movies go. This is how they function. They're mostly experiments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everything is under construction, under development, and that's fine. I don't mind that at all. But this, I don't know whose bright idea it was to start with the pillowcase, because it's so interesting that once they realized the hockey mask could work, it becomes like it becomes like the crown jewels. They treat it with this kind of reverence.
Right. Well,
even,
I think
even after having only worn it for the space of about a film and a half, it is the iconography of Jason already.
Yeah, right. I think part of the bag came from. Have you seen The Town That Dreaded Sundown?
Yes,
that's a rather famous low budget horror movie, and
it's
of
also,
course it's a similar. It's almost exactly the same, except at least the serial killer in The Town That Dreaded Sundown managed to have 2 eye holes. I still don't get the 1 eye hole.
Well, 2 things about that. First of all, I have some theories about why they went to the pillowcase that I'll share when we talk about part 2.
All right.
But I'm also struck, and I don't mean this in any way as a criticism, I do consider this as one of the big 3, the oligopoly of horror franchises.
Absolutely.
But looking at the other 2 in that oligopoly, it's very clear that this is by far the least original premise.
Yes.
I mean, the original movie was by the producer's own admission, a cash in on the slasher craze, and every subsequent prequel is them trying to cash in on their own success
Right, yeah.
again and again and again.
Well, you
and
can
they have to reach out to other horror franchises in order to do that, to kind of fill the gap.
You can also see it by year of release, because these are coming out in fast succession.
That's incredible.
80, 81, 82. Then they skip 83, but 84, 85, 86. They don't stop to take a breath.
No.
It's so funny to listen to the Crystal Lake Memories, because every single sequel talks about how they thought this was the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Everyone left each movie thinking they were
thinking
done.
they had finished it, and they even would have cakes that say "Happy Death Day, Jason."
Right.
And I just love the idea that rapidly, because they're coming out at such rapid succession year after year after year, that it must have been just weeks after one finishes that somebody in the room said, fuck it, let's make another one.
Yeah, absolutely, and they were sort of financially foolproof as well. It seems like even the movies that people didn't particularly enjoy did very well in terms of their box office. So
that's right.
Yeah,
and I'll say this: for the movies we're about to talk about, we talk a lot about the law of diminishing returns. That's not true for this series.
Right.
These movies make money, and there's also
they're critic proof as well, because
totally.
Yeah,
people didn't give a shit.
Some lousy reviews.
Terrible reviews. Gene Siskel just eviscerated. I think it was the first movie.
That's one of my favorite aspects about the Crystal Lakes Memory documentary is when they cut to footage of Siskel and Ebert reviewing one of the movies, and as soon as you see Roger Ebert's flailing arms, you know it's not good news. Once those arms start to flail, you know he's talking about a 1980s slasher.
Right. And there was a bigger, I think there's a bigger narrative for this series in general in regards to critics, because it was a particular time for slasher films. This series really got the short end of the stick critically. In
so many ways. Well, in terms of censorship as well.
And that's what I was going to speak to. This is the series that everybody would point to about how shitty Hollywood is and what it's doing to children, and how we're corrupting teenagers in this time, and they're all becoming Satan worshipers. It all relates back to Jason and this series. And when you watch the behind the scenes stuff, you even say they were fairly cognizant of that, and they'd said, yeah, we're going to do this, but we'll just try to end it. We'll be good. When they were talking about making part 4, they were like, okay, we hear you. We'll just kill him and we'll be done with it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the movies go on. But so there's this other interesting narrative about how shitty these movies are supposed to be. Yeah. And of course, you and I are here to answer, are they that shitty?
No, and that the lack of originality kind of cuts both ways, because it feels like a blank canvas sometimes. That allows for far more experimentation with tone and style and genre than other horror series which are kind of set in stone early on.
Right.
So one of the things that I really admire about this series is the way in which it is almost like a collage of other horror franchises.
I'll go one further.
Its ability to change pace from movie to movie.
Yeah,
is almost, again, like along with the sense that it's the sequels are the franchise, unlike any other horror series and maybe any other film series that I can think of. I also think that ability to sort of change pace and switch things up from movie to movie is really speaks well of the series and makes it more rewatchable than other horror franchises.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also I want to personally point out that as I watch this series that is kind of famously derided in a lot of ways, I see other horror franchises borrowing.
Yeah, I mean they would. That's the interesting thing is that, and this is where it's great that you have the people behind the movies are not pretentious. They don't make any bones about what it is they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't pretend that they weren't derivative and plagiarizing other movies, but they whatever combination of of variegatedly derivative horror movies they put together in itself becomes something that is unique and original that then other horror movies imitate.
Yeah.
So again, it cuts both ways, and it's they their take on the material is as original as any other horror franchise, but they're not coming at it from the point of view of trying to be original. They're trying to latch on to a craze.
Well, like you said, by their own admission.
Yeah, yeah. And along the way, they kind of discovered that I think they had something that that different creatives could kind of map ideas onto that became something different every time.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons I'm excited to talk about this series is the overlaps and parallels to another film series that we've done in fairly recent memory, which is the Star Trek original movie series. Or Star Trek original series movies.
Yeah.
Is that I mean, they're both Paramount productions. They have even number sequels that are more highly regarded than the odd numbers. And like the Star Trek original series movies, the tone of the movies is kind of reinvented on the fly.
Yeah.
From movie to movie, every movie is kind of a different proposition, and one is either kind of almost kind of a mirror of the other in the sense that you've got a TV series that was then successfully adapted into a movie series, and Friday the 13th is the opposite. It's a
They got a series out of it. Yeah.
They got a TV series out of it. So,
can we briefly also talk about what else this particular series has spawned? Did you notice that this particular series has, I don't know, probably at least close to 24 fan films that have been made?
Arguably, one of them is made in the run that we're looking at. I would class one of the 2 to 6 as a fan film.
Okay.
No, I didn't know that actually. I hadn't looked into that. It doesn't.
What's interesting is that
doesn't surprise me.
If I'm watching the movies, I'm kind of looking at the actors while I'm watching it, kind of, hey, well, is that person still working? I would think to myself, well, that person's quite good. Are they still working or what? And so I'd look them up, and then I'd notice that they're in these, different fan films, and so a lot of the actors are coming back and then performing in those fan films.
The main series doesn't want them back, so they got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, they always are starting at zero.
This series is not kind to legacy characters or actors in terms of return engagements. It makes that very, very clear from the very beginning of the first sequel.
Well, I mean, we're here to rank. We have to declare good and bad.
Yep.
So, as always, first question, how close are these movies? Do you have one that's way at the front?
That's really interesting that you asked the question in that way, because that is exactly my dilemma. At one end of my list, there are 3 movies that are essentially interchangeable in terms of where they could go. The other end of the list, a bit more self-evident, I think. But on one end of the list, there are potentially 3 movies that could be ranked in any order.
At the top?
Well, I can tell. I was going to save that as a surprise, whether it was the top or the bottom, but I can tell you now if you want.
Yeah, go.
It's the top.
All right.
There are three movies that I don't think I've ever been in that position on this podcast before, where I've had it where it's been close margins between two movies, but never three.
I feel kind of the same.
Like literally, like third on my list could be first.
Right.
And I wouldn't have to I wouldn't have to make any adjustment.
I'll tell you this, the movie that I as of right now that I came.
Yeah, I know.
They're always
mine's a game day decision for the between three. And I mean that genuinely. It's not like two. It's not like it's really close between two, and then one is kind of like hanging in the background. No, all three could be top.
When mine that I think is sitting at number 3 right now, when I finished watching it, I said to myself, "Fuck, I think that's my favorite movie."
Yeah. Well, at the end of each of these movies that are the they're the top 3 of my list.
Mm-hmm.
In what order I'm still grappling with. But after every single one, I went, "This is the one to beat." And then what made it worse was rereading my notes yesterday, and realizing that the movie that I was potentially going to put in third place might be the most sophisticated movie in, certainly in this side of the series, and really struggling.
Oh man, I'm getting curious.
Really, and then again, we've talked about this before. It always comes down to this when it's close. What do you value more?
So that's the thing, and I think it's really interesting within this particular series itself, because I found myself. Well, look. You've got one sequel that feels very cosmically connected to the movie that preceded it. You've got a movie where the
I like your use of the word cosmically, because you can't say narratively or dramatically or cosmically. In spirit,
yes,
it's
exactly.
The sequel.
in spirit, it feels much like the original movie. But then you have a movie in the middle that gives the series its biggest iconography.
Sure.
And then you have a movie that tries to do something completely different.
Yeah.
And then you've got a movie that, I don't know, maybe I'll save it, but is certainly...
Well, you've got potentially 2 or 3 movies that try and do something completely different.
Yeah, that's true.
In the space of 5 movies.
It's really fun.
And yet somehow,
but like you said, it's what do you value the most?
Yeah, but in the end, they all feel like remakes of the other, which is the other kind of weird paradigm of this series.
Right. Because they'll never leave Crystal Lake. And it's interesting when you think about who do we get? The character's Ginny, right? The final girl.
In number part
in
5?
number 2.
In number 2, yes, that is Ginny, yes.
So it's Ginny, and the proposed sequel was going to be Ginny in the hospital and Jason comes after her. And it's interesting that they chose to...
Which again is Halloween 2.
Exactly, yeah.
And they eventually do make that movie. They're going to get around to it eventually.
At some point. Anyway,
it's I find that that's what makes this series so compelling to me, is its contradictions.
Yeah.
And there are plenty
on top
of
of it. Wait, well, let me ask you: had you seen all these movies?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's funny? I hadn't.
You hadn't seen all of them or any of them?
I hadn't seen one of them.
Which one?
6.
No way.
Yeah.
That as a James Bond fan, that offends me.
I can't wait to get to that note.
Can you imagine the first time I saw that? What that did to my brain?
Oh my god. It's written in capital letters on my fucking notes, I'll tell you that much.
What's great when you get to the Crystal Lake, when you get to the Crystal Lake Memories version of that, people are jumping over each other to claim credit for that one
That's funny.
bit of editing. I love it. And it's like I would be the same if I worked on that movie.
I'd want all the credit.
I'd invent some reason as to why that was my masterstroke. But no one really knows who actually did it. That's the other thing.
Well, it's funny because I Mandela affected something for myself because, 5 and 6 basically start exactly the same way. But I also knew that. I knew that 6 borrowed what 5 had done. And so, but the funny part is like, I still thought I'd seen it. So I knew that part. And if somebody asked me what 6 was about, I'd say, I don't know. I don't remember that one very well.
But it also doesn't help that Part 5 starts out as the movie that Part 6 will become, but the rest of Part 5 is not that movie.
Yeah, right.
So again, they'll get around to it eventually. It's the monkey typewriter conundrum, isn't it? If we make enough Friday the 13th movies, eventually all these potential mini movies that are contained within the films themselves will eventually happen.
Well, do you have anything else to say before we?
I don't think so. I think I've given away quite a lot.
All right.
So I'm happy to. I'm ready to rank. I mean, I'm still in my mind. I'm still tallying.
Would you like me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Well, let me tell you, friend. The movie at the top of my list was my biggest surprise because it's the one I thought was going to be at the bottom of my list.
Oh, wow.
Because I had an idea about this movie and what it was, and it turns out I was wrong because I had not seen the movie. Friday the 13th, Part 6, top of my list. I fucking unabashedly love this movie.
Yeah, there's no... again, I have no comeback for that. Except to say that...
Good.
Except... no comeback, no notes. You're unquestionably right.
Except?
However... This is what pains me. And this is the movie that I think is the most sophisticated movie in the series.
I do too. Yeah. And that's why it was such a pleasure for me.
It is
to see the levels it's playing on, to see what the director cares about, knows, and loves.
Oh.
And I think that movie is brilliantly shot and edited. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I'll go. I think I've decided. So
great.
I'm really glad you did that, and in a sense, it takes the heat off me. So I can just acknowledge that could have easily been.
It's one of your 3.
It's definitely one of my 3.
Okay.
But in the end, I'm gonna go. The top of my list is the movie that, to borrow a phrase from the end of Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, is the most human. And it's a movie that I feel takes the kind of paint by numbers Friday the 13th formula and makes it feel quirky and unusual and authentic and awkward in a way I didn't really think was possible with the slasher genre, and that's Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so much in that movie, and this is why I think I knew I was going to put it at the top of my list. There's so many cinematic lightning in a bottle moments.
I agree. And I'll let the cat out of the bag. Yeah. It's at number 2 for me.
Yeah.
But as I said before, number 3, I thought might be number 1 when I finished watching it. But
sure.
But like you said, I there are things going on in 4 in the final chapter that I just find myself gravitating to and it's that's the movie I remember the most in my memory. That's the movie that I remember hearing the most about when I was a kid. It was the movie where other kids were saying, "You're not going to believe what happens. He's just, he's got the machete. He's just over him and he's hitting him and hitting him and he's yelling, 'Die, die, die, die.'" And there is no other film in the franchise, maybe not even the first one, that I remember being in the collective memory of everybody around me at that time.
Yeah.
Which I think says something for the film itself.
It's so memorable compared to the other movies.
Yes, right.
As I say, it has those lightning. We'll break them down individually, but there are lightning in a bottle moments aplenty. It's the least obvious use of the formula,
right?
And it kind of and outside of the horror genre, it nails a style of movie that I think is the hardest to get right tonally, which is quirkiness in a movie, this movie. And it's the least likely place to find it, right?
Well, and that's what I was going to say about. That's one of the reasons 6 is at the top of my list, because when I think of the Friday the 13th series, I don't think about whimsy.
No.
And that movie's got some whimsy,
It has whimsy, but it's and I guess again, what do you value more? The idea that what slightly makes this not slightly superior. Again, this is just for the purposes of ranking at this point.
Right.
It's not bad. It's not better. I'm just according it a place based on my value system.
Sure.
Which is that part 6 is primarily an ironic movie.
Yes.
Friday the 13th, the final chapter is
well, it's unironic.
characterized by me by its earnesty, but it's also it also tonally is quirky, so you get a lot of the same pleasures.
Mm-hmm.
But the approach, I don't know. The approach it's
totally
to me.
Yeah, a total different approach. You're right.
They do that without having to resort to irony. And again, I don't like putting it in those terms because that suggests that
one's lesser.
Resorted to irony, it absolutely did, and irony is just the way they're playing it, and they're absolutely right to in that moment with that director, with that writer, with that cast. You cast a bunch of mime artists. What the fuck else do you think is going to happen? So again, that is literally what it comes down to for me is that that minutia of the final chapter earned its quirkiness in a way that's more organic than part 6 Jason Lives.
I can agree with that.
Which is a ridiculous distinction, but we're dealing with 3 movies that are absolutely on a par with each other in terms of quality.
All right.
So I'm going to have to make those distinctions.
Well, then
the format made me do it once again.
This is the life we've chosen, as we've said before. You must rank what?
Yeah. And it tells me a lot about myself as a filmgoer that
right
that I don't again. There's no flaws in Final Chapter, but as an artistic feat, Part 6 is more impressive.
Well, thank you.
And yet I know it, but I know in my heart, Friday the Final Chapter is a better movie. Like it's a better all-round movie. So but I can't explain it better than I have.
No, I understand completely, and I hold no ill will. Now, let me ask you this though. We already know that 3 of these movies could be your number 1. We know my 1 and 2. Does that mean that 6 is at the number 2 spot, or does something else claim it?
I think something else claims it, and this is what kills me.
Fantastic. Love it. Well, this is where we're going to find out if we're even of like minds for the top 3. So I'm interested.
Yeah. Do you want me to go, or are you going to go?
No, you go ahead.
As I inadvertently quoted a J.J. Abrams film then, and I feel weird about it.
He's creeping up on you.
He really is.
He's becoming more present in your good mind.
He's whispering
You're
in my
borrowing
ear
now.
like a clone Palpatine. Well, yeah, my number 2, I think, upon reflection, is Part 2.
All right.
And again, I take no pleasure in saying that, but
why not?
He is. Well, no, I say I do take pleasure in saying it. I don't want these other movies to feel like they've done anything wrong. That's my issue.
Daddy doesn't love you any less.
Yeah, I know. It is. It's like picking between children. But I will say the sole reason why, both the reason why I hate having to put it second, but why it has to be at least second.
Mm-hmm.
2 words: Steve Miner.
Yeah, for me too.
This is his directorial debut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've seen a better directorial debut ever.
That's interesting.
His command of the camera
is amazing.
For a first timer is out of this fucking world. I was genuinely shocked when I learned it was his directorial debut. I thought there is no way this person hasn't had at least one film to establish this authority and command.
Well, but he at least was around the Friday the 13th universe. Not that automatically means he's going to be able to.
It's just like hanging around a porn set, essentially. I mean, that's how I think of it.
But I'm glad to hear you say that number 2 is there for you, because number 2 is my number 3 that could have been my number 1. That I thought for sure when I finished it. I thought I let the cat out of the bag in the sense of like, because it's the first movie I watched, of course, and at the end of it, I thought there's no way that any other movie is going to go to the top.
I said this is the one to beat.
That's it, It's like, but what you were saying, most especially about shot selection, he does things like when Jenny walks into Michael Myers, his shack lair.
Yeah.
And then that shot of him running towards it in the background.
And
we know, but she doesn't know. And she's going to know 2 seconds later, but...
Yeah. Well, some of the focus shifts in that scene, it's like, he does better 3D cinema when he doesn't have a 3D camera.
I know exactly what you mean. And the other...
You're able to make a 3D movie with a 2D setup. And when you actually get the 3D camera, it doesn't work so good.
It doesn't work so good, yeah.
It looks more like a shallow 2D movie.
Right. But the other thing I think he does remarkably well in that movie, he toggles. He's able to toggle back and forth between the killer's point of view and the victim's point of view.
I have those exact notes, and I'm really glad that you picked that up too, because I'm not doing research for this movie. I'm not reading around going, this is a masterclass in how to do film voyeurism, but you saw it, I saw it.
Yeah, right.
It's very sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, I guess and again, if being comparative, I think Tom McLaughlin's job is equal as a director to Steve Miner. I actually think Tom McLaughlin's screenplay is better than the screenplay for so
yeah, sure.
That again, technically it should be at the top, but
that's the thing. This is the movie that I said is cosmically connected to the original. It's almost
I'm gonna say that.
in narrative, it's almost the same exact story, just supplant Jason for the mother. But we have a same surprise ending. There's a lot that, despite the fact that they're retreading, he can make it seem brand new.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. It is. It seems brand new. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
And there are some key reasons why it stands alone. Not just because, as many have commented, wouldn't fit into
Right. Yeah.
any possible timeline.
No, yeah.
There are other reasons, I think.
There's
and again,
a part of that I kind of like.
Sort of,
I kind of like how the series is unapologetically saying, "Hey, don't fucking worry about it."
do you know what the best part of that is? That it catches up with itself, and then it jumps forward again. It's like fucking Wile E. Coyote. It keeps catching up with the Roadrunner,
Right.
and then the Roadrunner gets away.
Yeah.
But again, the authenticity versus irony question, I like that this movie is done straight down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And unironically, I think it was a really good choice. Again, really the only reason that it's number two on my list is that some of the iconographic and mythological aspects of the movie, because it is the first go around with Jason, feel kind of underbaked.
Okay.
And half developed. That's it.
Yeah.
But again, I can't really hold that against it because the original movie.
It's not their fault
Jason
that the first. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And they're trying things out, and most of them, they're just throwing things at a wall. Some of them stick, but what doesn't stick stands out as not sticking.
Perfect.
And in a perfect world, I'd never need to bring that up because it's pretty much redundant to the overall feeling I have about the movie. But if I'm gonna rank, then I'm gonna have to mention it.
Okay. Well, does that mean that 6 is at number 3 for you?
Yeah, it is.
Good.
And again, only because I think the tonal route that 2 and 4 take is more worthy than the irony route.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's literally it.
All right.
In a technical level, they're all on a par with each other. And props to Joseph Zito. I mean, I'm not
totally.
I don't want him to feel left out.
Let's not throw him under the bus because
underappreciated middle child.
Absolutely. But the ideas he comes up with, there are things he does at the beginning of that movie that I think are really smart. He talks about it actually on the talking about keeping Jason dead for a long time.
Yes.
To the the idea until the audience is going to say fucking wake up. Yeah. I thought that was really smart. I love that. Well, and bringing Tom Savini back, that's
Yeah. I mean, and he, again, what I love about the Crystal Lake Memories documentary is that there doesn't seem to be a great deal of ego amongst any of them.
No, you're right.
He cops to the fact that he came in halfway through production. He replaced the original makeup artist, and the Jason prosthetic that he got credit for was half built by the time he got there, and that's it.
And Savini was like, they did great work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like the idea. I forget the name of the stuntman who was playing Jason.
Mm-hmm.
But there was that shot, the raft death.
Yes.
And they talked about how particularly grueling it was. It's midnight. It's like 22 degrees. This poor actress is getting hypothermia.
Yeah.
But he wanted the shot. And it was the guy that played Jason, who's, this guy used to work with like John Wayne, who said, get her out of the fucking boat. He's like, hey, how about I direct and you fucking be Jason? And he's like, well, get her out of the boat or I quit. But when they talk about it like you said, without a lot of ego. He's not blaming the director. He's saying he wanted the shot and I get it. But did he go a little too far in terms of taking care of an actor? Yeah, I think so. So I spoke up.
Yeah, it's amazing how I recently finished watching In Search of Darkness 3, which is the completion of the of the 80s horror documentary trilogy, and it's a bit amazing how low the bar is set on horror movie directors.
Right.
You know, it's like how often people comment that he's not an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Right.
you shouldn't be. In real life, you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But, like, that's worthy of comment on a horror movie set.
Yeah. Right. Big notes for Steve Miner in that area. Like,
Absolutely.
what a
And it
non-asshole
shows.
he was. And it shows. You're right.
Just doing his job, getting on with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's phenomenal work from all three. That they are. And what I also find interesting is we talked when we did the Star Trek original series movies about the sort of the popular myth of the even number sequels
Yeah, right.
are good, the odd numbers are bad. Whereas this is the series where I would accept that more readily.
Right.
And yet nobody talks. I've heard it on, with Gawley and Rust as an aside when they covered the Friday movies, but that's it. And it's like it's not like everyone goes around going, hey, the thing about the Friday the 13th movies, every even numbered sequel is good, but the other ones suck. It's like no one says that, and it's not entirely true. It's still somewhat of a myth, as I will talk about now.
Yeah.
As a segue into us talking about the other two movies in this series.
Well,
in this
we
part of the series.
yeah. So it appears that we're of like minds, but I think we're different on 1, 2, and
Yeah.
3. Correct?
But your list could be my list on
Easily.
any other day. Yeah.
All right. And then that just leaves the last 2 movies, and this is really tough stuff for me.
Really?
I think so.
It's a lot. It's pretty clear for me.
There are things I value in both movies.
That I agree with, but it's still clear which one is better for me.
Okay, which
Or
one's better?
Friday the 13th Part 3,
Okay.
now in 3D and disco.
Oh, so good.
Not the official subtitle, but I feel that's what I feel like. I feel like gives a better description of the movie than simply saying Part 3. And so the reason why it's not in the top. This is the movie in the series where, to me, the formula coagulates into something substantial.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a curse and a blessing because it's very paint by numbers. I think you talked about that.
We did, yeah. That movie feels
it's like a textbook.
It
slasher.
feels like a textbook slasher. Yes.
Not in a good way. Not like in you can learn how to make a slasher. It's just
Right.
like there's not enough here for a movie kind of thing. And it's very paint by numbers, so that's both. But it's at least competent, which counts for a lot.
Mhm.
Not under.
It's still
undermining
Steve
that.
Miner.
It's still Steve Miner, but I think the misstep is they put way too much energy and effort into making it a 3D movie, and that
Yes.
simply doesn't read when you're watching it as a 2D movie.
And even within the 3D, even though you're watching it in 2D, there are things that make me think, man, I fucking wish I was watching this in 3D. And I hate 3D. But but I'm all
Yeah.
for watching the snake jump out of the cage. I would be all for the axe in Jason's head with his hands reaching out. Those are things I think I enjoy seeing in 3D. I don't need to see yo-yos. I don't need to see fruit, wallets being thrown. These are the things where...
At some point, it's the cinematic equivalent of having things like being poked in the face.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Like the washing two washing line poles, by the way.
Yes, right.
Not one, but two. So I think, and it's
not like they're the only
doesn't
poles.
translate. No.
There's like a half a dozen poles attached to
Right.
pitchforks, attached to
Right.
shovels.
And if you can get you get anything to go along some kind of a pole, that works too. Yeah, so
Pole with a rat on the end of it.
so I just have I have mixed feelings about it, but to me it's on the right side of competent in a way that deserves credit. It's just a shame that the movie feels so empty because so much of it is given over to a kind of pointless purpose, really, if you're not watching it in 3D.
And so that's the thing is, for me, I was having a hard time wrestling a movie that I think is better made. Not a little, is better made.
This one.
This one, 3.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
suffers from this distraction.
Very distracting, yeah. Literally the definition of distraction. It's like, get that fucking thing
Out of my face,
so I
please.
can see the movie.
Yes. And then the funny part is, you know what kind of turned me around on it was even one of the actors
Yes!
had said,
It haunts me.
Yeah, this is bullshit. This is fucking terrible. And he's saying it to the producer and Steve Miner. And Steve Miner said, no, this is a Friday the 13th movie, and it's in 3D, and it's going to make money. And then, of course, he was right.
I remember there was a talking head from one of the actors in that documentary that it haunts me to this very day. he says, you should have seen it in 3D.
Yeah.
But then, and this is like a somewhat official documentary, a sanctioned documentary. It's like, but it just doesn't really work
In 2D.
And, and that kind of that covers all my feelings about it. Is that it's potentially a lost masterpiece, but we'll never be able to gauge that.
I read that there was a movie theater, I can't remember, Michigan, maybe? Until maybe 2017, they'd show it every year in 3D. And then I don't remember what happened. At some point, but fairly recently, it stopped.
Again, it makes me think of Spinal Tap and the dusting for vomit. Best left unsolved. It's kind of like the extended cut of Superman 4 or the Attack of the Clones IMAX version.
Yeah, right.
Says was a it's sort of like these are best left as sort of mythic properties. Because maybe it would still be a paint-by-number slasher with some interesting effects. I just
yeah. But you know what's funny is that in terms of ranking, I had to weigh what doesn't work within the 3D, especially when watching it in 2D, then compensating for that and saying, well, as originally intended in 3D.
Right, but that's not the film you're watching,
or less.
But that's where that's where your I think your disdain, if I'm not using too strong a word, for 3D cinema, which I echo, comes into play, because that's not the same as a film.
Right.
There's a very select type of film that can be made in 3D and stand up to the scrutiny that we would give a normal film.
Mm-hmm.
IMAX is
and also, I have to give this movie credit because it ushered in a new era of 3D. Jaws 3 the very next year. I mean, there were a bunch of movies that came out. And this was like the first in this era.
Not quite the first. Not quite the first. There was
new cameras, though.
It started cameras.
This is the first time without the red and blue.
This started in 80. It was 81 to 83. So again, they're riding the wave. But again, they sort of made one of the better versions of the idea.
But anyway, what I had to do was juxtapose that against one of the most interesting things I think this series does in Part 5, A New Beginning.
Yeah.
Which is to take the formula and then kind of turn it into an Angela Lansbury Murder, She Wrote episode.
Which, of course, is a callback, a looping back to the original movie, which was also a whodunit.
Right, exactly.
So that is the aspect of Friday the 13th
Part 5,
A New Beginning, that
and they tell you right in the title
that I really appreciate. I'm not sure it's even particularly successful in that mission. But
no, I don't think so. But I think it's a big swing to have.
Oh, it's the biggest fucking swing
to have not Jason Voorhees in your movie.
Yeah, it's like let's go back to the original.
In
No-
number
no
5, I
Jason-
might add. Number 5.
Yeah, let's go back to the original. No Jason Voorhees except in dream sequences.
Right.
And it's a whodunit.
Yeah.
So there are things I value about the movie, and the whodunit aspect I think is really smart. In terms of ranking, to give the other side, it's the least legitimate of all these movies. It feels like fan fiction.
Yeah.
If you'd have told me that this was an unofficial entry to the series, I would have said I wouldn't have had a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying.
It doesn't reach the technical heights of any of the other movies.
That's the thing. So at the end of the day, like, I'll take 3 over 5 based solely on that first crane shot of the general store that goes into the backyard with the laundry hanging.
Although they're proximate in the sense that they both have the same tonal problems. I think 3 and 5, that they're leaning into broad comedy
Mm-hmm.
in ways that don't work for this series.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
And it takes a Tom McLaughlin to come in and
Right.
sort of redress that balance and say, look, no, if you do it properly, if you do it with purpose and intent and intelligence, comedy can work. But
Yeah.
not the way you've been doing it.
Right. Yeah.
So,
all right.
That's why. So, but I'd be interested when we do talk about the movie to talk about some of the pluses as well as the minuses.
I just really respected the big swing, and
yeah.
But I couldn't. At the end of the day,
if it had been
couldn't...
executed better, it could have been one of the best movies in the series.
Mm.
But it's the wrong choice at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is the mirror. That is the mirror universe to Part 6. That's another tick in the column of Part 6.
Right.
It knew exactly what the series
needed at that time.
And delivered in more than spades.
I'll say
whatever one up from spades is.
Well, now I'll save it till we get there, but I mean, the one thing the reason it's at the top of my list, it's difficult, I think, to make the conscious decision to go more comedic in a movie and in a franchise when you're at number 6 already, and yet still keep your movie suspenseful and scary. And not, the comedy is there, but it's not wink wink and it's not shuck shuck, like,
No.
It's just pitched at exactly the right tone.
I'm doing it a disservice by just talking about the irony of it, because one of the, again, what made it really hard to put this as number 3 on my list was that there's a lot of heart in this movie.
Yeah.
And one of the most pleasant surprises of the series of kind of any horror movie I've ever seen, that they managed to factor in a redemption arc for Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah.
And a love story.
Mm-hmm.
And a happy ending. And children.
I know. There's finally children
none
at the
of that
camp.
none of that is treated ironically or in a detached way.
Right.
So I'm doing it a disservice by dwelling on the ironic aspects of the movie, and it doesn't even matter because it's what we talk about all the time. It's like if the movie tells you what it is and sticks to it, it's inherently a good movie.
Yeah.
And this movie comes out of the cemetery gate, a supernatural horror comedy, and so even if it just did that, it would be a success.
It would be, right.
But it does far more than that.
It does way more than that.
Yeah.
But it starts with Horshack getting a fist through his chest.
Horshack, yeah.
Gotta like that.
That's it, and then brings in another one of your classic sitcom references.
Yes.
Although Welcome Home Carter is probably
come on, people know it. Yeah.
People know better than Gimme a Break or.
How dare you? people.
I consider myself
I
consider myself a scholar of that era of American television. The first time you said that, I was like, "That's not real. What is Gimme a Break?" that like some kind of pool-based game show?
Oh. Well, the bottom of our lists match then. I got to give it 3 over 5.
Yeah, I think that's. I think I like that you're not. Again, going back to Star Trek, it's like Star Trek 5 is the worst. Is the worst of the movies, but that doesn't mean it's about. It doesn't mean it's a.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot to recommend it. And I think the same is true of New Beginning.
All right, good.
As baffling as some of his choices are, just like the Final Frontier.
Well, let's talk good, bad.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
I think we could just cut to the chase.
We can.
On the first 3 on both of our lists, can't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All three are great movies.
All right. I'm glad you just used the word great.
There's no reason not to, right? Now that we're out of the ranking dilemma, it's like why pretend that that any one of these 3 movies is better than the other, just different.
But this is the thing that I really love about this particular series. We talked about how this, in popular culture, this series was kind of derided, and whatever. It was, under the rules of Gene Siskel, it was considered low art, if art at all.
Under the draconian regime of Gene Siskel.
Exactly. And I don't think in popular culture these movies are considered to be even good, much less great. And I was so happy to watch these movies and be able to think to myself, these movies are fucking great.
I mean, it is in niche circles. Like, I mean, was it the most recent Scream movie where they list the best horror sequels, and I think at least one of these movies, probably part 2, is there. And I think there's a growing acknowledgement again amongst. But it's the problem with horror as well, isn't it?
Right.
Horror has a low reputation. Sequels have an even lower reputation.
Sure.
So you put those two together.
Yeah, it's a hard hill to climb.
It's just people are shitting on it from all different angles.
Sure.
But I think if you know sequels and you know horror movies, you know that these are remarkable artworks.
Yeah.
Because, how often in any series that we've done has a set of sequels transcended the original in this way? We've not seen many series that do that.
No, yeah, you're right.
And again, Star Trek might be another one of them.
Well, yeah.
But it's rare, and for horror sequels, again, going into that law of diminishing returns. But I mean, we've got Patreon episodes to cover, so I won't say that they get better, but potentially they do, and they certainly don't get worse for than the original for quite a way into the series.
I mean, how often have we talked about the laws of diminishing returns? Critically,
each sequel is building on the other.
Yeah.
In interesting ways, even if it's unsuccessful, like New Beginning.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Still building on the last film in an original way. Interesting.
It's still a choice you can't deny.
Right.
I mean, we already talked about it. It's a big swing. It's an interesting choice. To the degree it works or doesn't work, you can argue that. But I don't think you can argue they took risks in this series. Which is funny because the risks they took were within such a formula.
Yeah.
But
that's the amazing thing of when going back to the beginning of this episode, Tom McLoughlin, he made part 6 starting with what was left.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what haven't we done? Well, we haven't done gothic horror.
Yeah.
We haven't made this a super. We've not just we haven't firmly said that this is supernatural.
Right.
We haven't said what Jason. We haven't established any ground rules for Jason. So he just added to, and I think the other directors and writers are working on the same principle, but not able to articulate.
But not,
it
yeah,
well,
they're not able to say
or
it
indeed
directly.
execute
Or
it as
yeah,
well
right.
as execute as well as Tom McLaughlin did, because when he's interviewed, he's very erudite. He can explain all these things.
Sure.
But if you asked, I've forgotten the name of the guy, the sleazy guy who directed New Beginning, but he probably wouldn't be able to account for the innovation of what he did.
I don't think so.
Maybe that's a patronizing thing to say, but
Danny Steinman.
Danny Steinman, there you go. I don't suspect Danny Steinman would be able to articulate that, but in a sense, he's doing exactly the same as Tom McLaughlin did.
Well, don't be too big an asshole. Danny Steinman had a bad bicycle accident shortly after that film, and it kept him from directing movies at all.
You know that wasn't what I was talking about. I wasn't saying that he couldn't, because of brain damage. I was saying because he comes from the world of exploitation and porn, which is a different kind of prejudice. I'll have you know.
Very good, then. All right. Well, so if we're both going to say that 2, 4, and 6, the even numbered ones, are in fact good films, that leaves us 3 and 5.
It does.
And where do you sit on number 3?
Right on the line.
It's the biggest fence post out of all of them, isn't it?
It's like the LBJ jeans that he describes in his famous phone call to his tailor. It's like riding a barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
These jeans.
You know what I think?
Right up in my bunghole.
You know what I think?
Those are actual quotes from Lyndon Johnson.
I know. I understand.
I
know you're not making it up.
Yeah, I know.
You know what
he uses the word bunghole in a call made from the White House phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well. Oh, LBJ.
Yeah.
We could use some more LBJs.
I don't think we're too far away from, in some respects, what we have now.
You're right.
In terms of haphazard personal decisions.
Oh, well, you know what I think is the tiebreaker for me on number 3? Because I've watched number 3 a few times now. And the first time I watched it, I think I kind of dismissed it. But I think it had more to do with the 3D thing we were talking about.
Right.
And then I watched it for Project 1982. And even hearing friend of the show, Matt Aldrich, say... Yeah, I don't know that he called it good, but he didn't dismiss it outright.
That's not my recollection, no. He didn't dismiss it.
He wasn't dismissing this movie outright. We talked about how it was a paint-by-numbers kind of film, and I agree with that. But on those terms, I think it works, and I think it works well enough to barely call it good.
And is that what you were indeed doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah, that is what I am indeed doing.
Okay.
I can give it the benefit of the doubt. It does enough.
Okay.
And you've got the hockey mask.
And that's the other thing is I can't discount that.
No, you can't discount the hockey mask, and you can't discount the kind of coagulation of the formula into something that for the first time feels concrete
and propels the series forward.
Yeah, and propels the series forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's enough, I think.
Just
call it a good movie.
And so that leaves us.
That leaves us with
a
famously derided movie
that
we clearly do not feel deride as much as other people do. But are we going to call it a good movie?
But is it a big enough swing to call it a good movie?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I got to agree. I mean, I feel bad saying it though.
I do too. Yeah. I'm not willing to Final Frontier it. Where we were both like, I think it's good. I don't know what. I think it's good. I was thinking about this. Thinking about this the other day. There's no like atheist subtext in this movie that I can draw on, right? You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, and the funny thing is I went into Star Trek V. Sure, I would call it a bad movie.
Exactly.
And that didn't happen.
And I've never discounted this movie. I've always respected what it tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the end, it is a lot more about execution than ideas. I don't think the
It feels a little clumsy.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they've got the right instincts to play it the way they did. I just think that they fumble it a little bit.
Okay.
And especially, I guess, in the end, like if your selling point, your USP is that you're a whodunit, it has to be a whodunit where you remember who the murderer is from earlier in the film. I think that's sort of 101 murder mystery, isn't it?
You know what's the funniest part about that is that there are going to be moments in that movie in which you're going to see, spoiler alert everyone, you're going to see the ambulance driver get about 4 seconds too long of a screen time of an extra look in the background, and you're going to think,
but it's the kind of movie that would do that with no agenda.
Exactly. You don't think it's there to help you figure out the murder mystery. You just think that there's a director that's like fucking his shit up.
You're just like, I just watched an autistic fat kid get, axed in the back.
Right.
Well, this doesn't seem strange to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no, always, I'm happy to consider it, but, yeah, the more I think about it, the less I think that the conceit of the movie is the problem.
No, yeah, I don't think it is. Yeah,
which is the received wisdom about it, that it was a misstep.
I disagree with that part.
It was a misstep that definitely could have worked if handled better.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
We've ranked. We've declared.
We have.
Now it's time to get down to business.
Yeah, this is the fun part where we just get to talk.
Oh, very excited.
Yeah, where I don't have to, worry about offending any of my children.
Yeah, exactly. You just wait. Number 6. We'll be with you in a moment.
You'll have your time. Once the other 2 kids have moved out.
How great is it we get to finish with 6?
You can have their room.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We can paint it whatever color you want.
It's like in a couple of years you're going to get a room all by yourself, okay? Just for now you have to sleep in a bunk bed underneath a very smelly adolescent.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, anything left before we go for you?
No.
All right.
Let's
get to the business.
All right, let's effectively start this series. Because everything that came before was just an origin story.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least that's what these films tell us it was.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to tell us what you think about this series. How do you rank? Are they good? Are they bad? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, fuck you to the man from Tesla.
That's to Elon Musk, by the way, not fuck you for anyone who doesn't agree with
us. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
So, what were you going to be when you grow up?
Fucking love that line. Fucking love that line.
Just a reminder, there are actual children.
Amazing.
In Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Talk about big swings.
Could you imagine
no bigger swing than putting
children
a
in danger
worth of children in a horror film?
Amazing.
I love the fact that, Tom McLaughlin's kind of gone through, as we said, he's gone through all the options of what's left, what the series hasn't done yet.
Right.
And I imagine that
Children
at
in
the bottom
Jeopardy
of his list was
hasn't done that yet.
Having actual children at the summer camp.
You're going to just wait for now, number 6. We'll get to you. We'll talk all about it.
Yeah. That's it.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. When you hear us next time, we got to talk Steve Miner. We got to talk Friday the 13th, Part 2. Until then.
He's a major, not a minor. In my books.
Agreed.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.